TD Ryan Unleashed is brought to you by Scott Zimet, your State Farm Insurance agent in DeKalb. Call 815-748-3101 or stop by at 2587 Sycamore Road, Suite D in DeKalb. Like a good neighbor, Scott Zimet and State Farm are there. Pizza Villa, pizza, pasta, sandwiches, and more at 824 West Lincoln Highway in DeKalb. Don't forget Kids Eat for Free on Thursday. For delivery or pickup, go to pizzavilla.com or call 815-758-8116. Elder Care Services of DeKalb. Safe, secure, and supported, helping you stay in home where you want to be. Call 815-758-6550 or stop in at 1701 East Lincoln Highway in DeKalb or on the web at ecsdekalb.org. My Insurance Guy in Sycamore covers Medicare to auto care and everything in between. Stop by at 204 South Main Street in Sycamore. Call 815-899-0950 or online at myinsuranceguy.com. Welcome into TD Ryan Unleashed podcast number 40 as we continue election 2026 chapter number 2. As last week we talked with Daniel Vantilbury, running for the District 5 County, the DeKalb County seat, District number 5. And today we have his opponent in the Democratic nomination, Devon Wilcox. Devon, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. If you get close to that mic, Dev.
Doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. And again, you explained to me there off the air when we were talking to Daniel, my understanding was that you two were running for, you are running for the Democratic nomination for District 5. But Susan Vanstock, who was appointed that seat right now, holds that, and she will be your opponent then in November.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, and then we have Susan Sands, who will run unopposed and from the Democratic side for the other seat in the county.
Yes, Selma Sands. Yep, that's right.
Sands. Okay, very good. Well, we appreciate you clearing that up. Well, tell us why you're running. I was asking Daniel the same thing, in this volatile times that we have right now and the mudslinging. Of course, there's always mudslinging in politics, but it's gone to another level now, Devon. And why get into politics now? Why do this?
I think maybe just for exactly that reason, right? There's so much mudslinging. There's so much, it's like a dirty word now, say politics. And it shouldn't be, right? It's about the act of service, of giving back, of being a public servant, of caring for your neighbors and wanting to help, make the world around you a better place. And I think, in a world of national news, national media, national politics, local politics and being, connected to your neighbors and worrying about something as simple as like, hey, are we going to fix this road? Or, hey, what are we going to do about, that subdivision down the street? Do we want that to look different? Or can we attract other businesses to our community? That's almost refreshing, right? Because it's like you're having those conversations in person. You're talking to somebody about this and you're thinking about what's the world that we want to inhabit, the world that we want to live in around the, mile radius that you live, right? You're not talking about what's going to happen in DC, what's going to happen in Springfield. It's about what's happening right here in DeKalb.
And that's what people want to know, and see that. Let's figure out who we're talking to here. Now, did you grow up in DeKalb, Devon? Tell us about it. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I have actually born and raised in DeKalb. So I was born at Kish, the old Kish.
Okay.
My mom used to
I've been
work
around
there.
enough. I can say the old Kish. I know where you're
Yep. Some people may not know. There was another Kish before this Kish. Yep. I was born there. My family actually has roots. My dad's family is from Waterman and has been here for a couple generations. My parents both went to NIU. It's a very familiar story. I'm sure many people have. Their parents went to NIU, and I'm here.
So, did you dip your toe in the Kishwaukee River?
Oh, yeah. You got it. Yep. I think that's where I was baptized. Kidding. I went to Cheeseboro, which is an old elementary school. Went to DeKalb High School, graduated 2010. Then I later went to Kishwaukee College for my associate's degree, and then graduated from NIU College of Business in 2014.
Wow, that's great. So when you call it idyllic childhood, maybe not idyllic, but what if, we hear people complain about DeKalb, and yet, my stepson, Ryan Beck, grew up in DeKalb and loved DeKalb and talks about his childhood all the time, riding around Northern Illinois University. What was it like growing up?
It was so interesting. I think about it now, and I grew up over near 7th Street and stuff like that. And you don't think about how fast this area has actually grown over 20 years. I remember when Sycamore Road was a Red Lobster, Kmart, and cornfields. You know what I mean? So it definitely has developed a lot. And it's
the
really
Red
great
Lobster
to see.
didn't make it? Oh my God.
No, the Red Lobster didn't make it. No, but I think it's a Panda Express now. So, yeah.
But what about politics? As a kid, did you run for student council? Or
I was politically aware as a kid, but I was not Yeah, I was probably very liberal from like a start as a kid, but I didn't get involved in a lot of like extracurricular school activities. I think I was a band for a little bit, but mostly kind of hung out with my friends. I was a little bit of a loner.
Okay.
Kind of blossomed a little bit after school, if you will. But was always very politically aware. I mean, I'm 34, so I was coming of age during the Iraq War. My dad actually is an Iraq War veteran, so he went
thank you for his service.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. Yeah, no, he served with a unit out of Duluth, Minnesota, in Iraq. He spent about 15 months there, around when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So that was always very like prescient and salient in my mind growing up and being aware of the world events and everything going on.
And the military, for that matter.
Exactly, yeah. So my parents actually met in the military. They were both veterans.
Is that right?
Yeah. And so I've always kind of been, I always joke I'm an Army brat without having been on an Army base, because it's just like everyone in my family has been in the Army or Navy. So yeah, a lot of service in my family, which is another reason why I also would like to give back as well. I did not choose that path for myself. Definitely see this as another way of being able to give back to the community.
Now, of course, the bottom line, and you refer to the bottom line, I'm going to ask you about that because it's not always all important, as you say, but you studied business, right? Tell us about that. It's great to know that you study business.
Yeah.
Get a practical approach to what you're doing here.
Barsima, yeah. So operations management, information systems is one of the tracks you can do there. So it's a really fancy way of...
Slow that down. What is that again?
Operations management, information systems.
Okay,
It's
all
a
right.
really fancy way of saying like logistics and computers for business. So
Okay.
it sounds fancy, but really it's just, how do we get things from point A to point B? How do we do that the most efficiently and cost effectively?
And then you're going to transfer that to the county board if you get the seat to make that more efficient for people to, I was overwhelmed. I go to the county board website and I couldn't believe how much you guys do.
Yeah.
The amount of information on there is just amazing. And then tell us now, you moved to Cortland. So why'd you make the move to Cortland?
Yeah, so love, high school sweetheart, my now wife. We've been together for 17 years. She grew up in Cortland, and we met in high school. We stayed together through college. We've been together ever since, and we were looking to put down roots and buy a house about 10 years ago, and we chose Cortland.
Okay.
So that was like where a lot of the growth was at the time, and we found a very nice house there. We're actually still there today. We love it, and it was very interesting because growing up in DeKalb, Cortland was like that small little town.
Right.
you know. But then I've been in Cortland now for like 12 years, and it's just this tremendous community. It's so great. The people. I could go on and on about the people.
Well, Mayor Mark Petrowski was
Cortland.
one of our guests here, and he pointed out that, first of all, it's the youngest town in DeKalb County. And,
Yeah, I remember hearing that actually. I was
Yeah.
listening to the podcast, and it was the size of the town and the age of the town. Yeah, it's really interesting because you got like Cicero being like the biggest.
And the other
one.
two, and then then Cortland. But now Mark Petrowski, he's a very interesting cat because not only is mayor of Cortland, but he was also involved with politics on other levels. Have you tapped into Mark's knowledge about politics?
Yeah, so Mark actually used to run the county board. He used to be the head of the county board. I think it was about 10 years ago.
Is it that long ago? Okay.
Yeah, don't quote me on that. But yeah, so then he later then decided to run for Cortland mayor. I actually supported his campaign for Cortland mayor. I knocked on doors for him, so I've known him for a couple of years now. And he was actually a part of me running. He approached me about like running for county board. He'd seen some of my interests and some of my opinions, and I actually didn't know the opportunity was available until he reached out to me. So he's been a tremendous asset in terms of just like, how do you do this whole thing? Because he's done it, and successfully, I might add. So it's good to kind of hear his point of view on things, but also it's just good to know that it's like, you look at politics and you think like, oh my God, like, how am I going to dive into this thing? And then you realize that it's just one foot after another, one step, the next step. It's really not complicated. It looks intimidating, but it's all about just making connections and talking to people.
What about the size of it? I asked Daniel the same thing. Obviously, 24 members of the DeKalb County Board. Do you feel is that efficient to get things done? Would you like to see that maybe cut in half? Or
I don't think it's a matter of like headcount efficiency. I think it's a matter of like, what are the things that we're dealing with as a county, right? There are so many things from the nursing home to developments around 88 and like solar farms. You have the forest preserves. You have, just the regular roads and the county staff to manage. I think the county staff
105,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
105,000 people in the county.
Yeah.
And then you have, I think, about 500 county employees.
Right.
So, when you look at it from that point of view, it's almost like, whoa, is 24 enough, right? Because these are all people doing, part-time. We all have day jobs, right? So, in terms of time commitment, I think it's actually more efficient to kind of spread the wealth and let everyone tackle a little bit at a time.
All right, and it's 585 highly dedicated employees for 105,000 citizens. Now, recently you have an interim leader. My understanding was that when we left briefly, Derek Highland, the county community development coordinator, has worked as the county interim administrator. I guess there was Administrator Corey Reckoner, if I'm saying that correctly,
Okay.
who dropped out after he was originally appointed there. So Derek Highland seems very high. I've interviewed Derek and seems very qualified. Do you have any opinions on that, or would you want to wait to get on the county board before you have an opinion about who should be running the county board?
Oh yeah, I think definitely don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. I definitely want to. I'm not somebody who can't admit when they don't know something. So I'm not as familiar. So I would reserve judgment. Definitely, would look to people with more experience who are part of the county board and who they feel is best to administer. Because again, like you said, 500-600 people, 105,000 people in the county. That's a lot to oversee as a full-time job. So we want to make sure we got the good person.
All the departments there too.
Yeah.
Now, for folks that don't know, District 5 is, again, I didn't know, District 5 represents DeKalb, Cortland, and parts of Sycamore and Maple Park. Does that make that difficult for you, Devon, to have four different counties that you're actually, four different towns that you're working with?
Yeah, I would say that it's overwhelmingly majority Cortland. That district is primarily Cortland. There's a little sliver of DeKalb. There's a little sliver of Sycamore. And then basically everything on the DeKalb County side of the line for Maple Park. So that is majority my backyard is Cortland. Okay. And there's also a lot of farmland there too as well. So you got the Whiskey Acres, you got a lot of the farmland to the south of Cortland, and as well as the mega dump area. So there's a lot of rural area as well. It's mostly Cortland. But even if it wasn't, if it was more of those other locations, again, born and raised here. I know DeKalb, I know Sycamore, I know Cortland. I will admit, I'm looking forward to get to know Maple Park a little bit more through this process.
I want to talk land to you too, because I want to ask you about what you thought about the data center that's being built. And but you mentioned the dump. We forget about the dump. We used to call it a dump when we were a kid.
Yeah, right.
The landfill. And I remember when I was over there in Cortland, we did some remotes from there with the radio station, and you guys had the thing set up to gauge how dirty the air was. And,
so
where does that stand now, Devon?
Yeah, people may not realize this, but the Cortland Elementary School is on this side of 88, and then the dump is on the other side of 88, right? So when you're looking at that from a proximity point of view, you can actually see the landfill from the elementary school. Honestly, that raises a lot of questions, a lot of flags in people's heads, right?
Right.
There was an incident a number of years ago where a number of children fainted at the elementary school. And as a result of that, there were a number of air quality detectors put all throughout the elementary school and surrounding it. So they do monitor that every day. High wind days especially are important to manage that because there's no barrier there, right? It's all a flat land.
Right.
My wife actually is a teacher's assistant at that school, so she's there every day. And so, that's very important to continue to make sure that we're monitoring that air quality, right? Because you can't move the dump, can't move the school, so we're kind of stuck with what we have there.
Right.
So I think the more we can invest in making sure that the air quality is safe and that we're continuing to monitor it and that those systems don't fail, I think is the best we can do at the moment.
As far as you know, does that dump have a lifespan? In other words, once it's full, right? I mean, are they moving out away from Cortland obviously now?
Personally, I'm not sure.
Okay, I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah. Yeah,
but while we're talking about land,
I
was recently at the meeting. I guess your opponent Daniel Tilburg was there as well at the DeKalb City Council meeting when we were talking about the data center, and I was very impressed by the number of people that got up and spoke. It was about half and half, for and against. A lot of union people were for, obviously, the building, and that's a lot of money involved there. But I was a little disappointed how once the readings were over, they just kind of shoved it through, and then they waived the second reading. And a couple of people, Amy Dowell in particular, I remember, asked just for them to postpone it at least. And what are your thoughts about that? Because somewhere in your article here in the Chronicle, you talk about it's not always, the next thing doesn't always have to be done. The almighty dollar doesn't have to be, because I know it's going to bring a lot of money into DeKalb. But what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess one of the things I talk about with my campaign is, right, is there's certain things you can't quantify, right? Is that there are things about our community where it's like when you ask questions about, what do we want it to look like? What do we want it to feel like? You can't put a number to those things, right? Also, I think it's important that we acknowledge that anytime you're talking about something like economic development or data centers, right, it's never just black or white, right? the example of something that happened in Tennessee is not the same as the example of something happening in Illinois. Right. Meta is not edge, right? So these are two different things. So I think where I personally fall on this is that, take the whole concept of data centers just popping up left and right? So not even this specific DeKalb example.
Yorkville's building one bigger than Central Park in New York, they say.
I think we needed as a country, not only as like DeKalb, or like take a big step back and ask, what are we doing here? Like, what is the point of these data centers, right? If it's all to roll out this giant AI machine, I have questions. I am personally a big AI skeptic. I'm like, what are we doing here? I don't think that, I put something into ChatGPT and it's all wrong. Like, you ask ChatGPT, tell me about Cortland, Illinois, half of it's wrong, right? So if we're saying this thing's going to replace a whole bunch of people's jobs,
right?
I have questions. It's not going to pass its performance review. Let's just say that.
Now, you're a younger person too now, because, my wife turned to me the other night and we're both on our phones and she goes, why do we need a data center? What do we need a data center for? And I go, what's on your phone right now? It's like, that's all got to be stored somewhere, right?
Well, a lot of it right now is AI, but even think about like just, how many photos do you have now on your phone, right? We all have that, right? And they may not all be on your phone, but they're stored somewhere. And that's what these data centers are, right? The more data we have that we keep for like consumer information or personal information, the cloud, if you have a cloud account, right? That's what, it's not actually up in the clouds, it's in these data centers, right? So that's what a lot of this stuff is. So it's not always AI, but a lot of the new growth around data centers is AI. And so I think conceptually, just to kind of take it back to your original question, I have concerns about the idea of rolling out the red carpet for AI. I have concerns about any community blanketly just welcoming any data center without restrictions on, water and energy use.
Yeah.
Now, to this specific example of the one in DeKalb, it is using renewables. It will not be using water to cool the data center itself.
Right.
It'll just be used for like potable. Exactly. So I think those are ways in which you can do this responsibly, but you also need to make sure that you're thinking about, like, the other thing is the decimals, the audible part of this, right? They hum.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah. So making sure those are in compliance, and I believe this one is within DeKalb City levels of compliance. So again, it's not as easy to say like this is bad or this is good, right? There's nuances to it. So,
It's funny you mentioned the hum. I have tinnitus, and my wife says, it's a constant ringing. She goes, doesn't that drive you crazy? I go, not if I don't think about it. But I could see next to a hum would just drive you crazy.
But if you're somebody who lives near that data center and, you're thinking about it, right? Like in Cortland, a lot of us live next to an airport. DeKalb Municipal Airport is right there.
Yeah.
And so every day you got planes humming and going, and you got trains coming and going, and it's one of those things that you just kind of tune out. But I'm sure when it was new, there was a lot of people who had questions about it, right?
My generation refers to the Blues Brothers movie where you got the apartment by the train tracks and then goes off and the trains go by. So often you won't even notice.
Oh, one of the greatest movies. And not at all relevant with Illinois Nazis. But anyways, moving on. But no, I would say, like, I think, obviously the economic growth, I think it was on your podcast, you guys were talking about, like, what are the biggest tax contributors to the area, right? It's Facebook now, right? It's Target, it's Ferrera.
Yeah, there's no arguing the benefits, that's for sure.
Yeah. So
and schools have benefited in it.
I think, again, when you kind of take it back to the things that you can't quantify, right? Public trust, public input, if you have 80 people showing up at a meeting expressing concern, that's important.
It was.
But, also, if you have 80 people showing up, in support, you have to weigh these things, right? So I'm not going to give an easy answer here.
No, I didn't expect you to.
But I don't think I don't envy the people making those decisions. I'm sure it's hard to weigh the pros and the cons. But I think where we can, I think it's the job of elected officials not to be mad when people don't understand, but to say, how can I help you understand if there's a gap in understanding, right? If somebody's angry about something and you don't think it's a problem, how do we reconcile that?
That's a good point. That's pretty good.
And so I think maybe there's more education needed, or maybe there are things that can be done to quell the concerns, but I don't think that we should ignore.
We're talking to Devon Wilcox, who is running for the DeKalb County. This doesn't flow up. DeKalb County District 5, number 8 there, against Daniel Vandenberg, who was a friend of yours, which is kind of cool. We were talking to Dan about that. When it comes to now your opponent, Suzanne Bamstad, she was appointed he had another difficult name after Savannah. Do you know how to say Eichenheine? I'm not sure how to say your name.
It's
Leichenheine?
you got me.
But anyway, she resigned from her position weeks before she was indicted on multiple charges there. Do you find, does that diminish the position at all, Devon, as far as you know? I know this is, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, and she's only been charged for this, but to have to step down like that, was that diminish the seat at all in your eyes?
Yeah, no, I think it's all about public trust, right? And when you have something occur like that, and again, we can say allegedly because, the
Right.
investigation is still ongoing and that's, being dealt with in the court of law as it should be. So I won't weigh in on that specifically, but just to say that, like, anytime that you are an elected official and you have the public's trust, whether that's DeKalb County Board all the way up to being a congressional representative, you owe something to your community, and that's to be forthright about your finances, to make sure that, you don't have any conflicts of interest, and to make sure that you're just morally and ethically, treating.
That public trust that you said.
Exactly,
That's so
yeah.
key.
And so, there was a lot of fraud over the COVID years, up and down, and that kind of stuff is still being dealt with. So I think this is also a good story in that, like, if allegedly something was mishandled, then that's being reconciled and dealt with. But, there's a lot of people at the top, of the income bracket who aren't facing that, right? And I think they should be. So let's make sure justice is fair across the income brackets and not just those, who, maybe got caught there. So, yeah.
There. Now,
But to that point, taking it back to, like, the idea of, like, the seat itself, I don't think it diminishes the seat. I think it is more, it speaks to the importance of it, right? Is that you have to rise above, the things that might get us, like, we all have finances, we all have day jobs.
Right.
But, in order to do this job effectively, you have to be thinking about everybody and not just yourself.
Very well put there. That's what Spock said, right? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
There you go.
Now, you had a great way to announce your candidacy. What was this, last Thursday, I guess it was, at the Cortland Lions Club. You had a food drive to announce your candidacy. Tell us about it. What a great way to do that.
Yeah, no, I just, personally, this is my first time running for anything. And, again, politics, there's so much money in politics,
Oh, yes.
up and down. And it's honestly obscene, right? The amount that we spend on campaigns.
Well, look at our politicians. They're mostly millionaires. It's
Totally, yeah. But you look at the 2024 election, right? The most expensive election in history, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could have ended hunger with that money.
I know.
But instead, we're spending it on TV ads. What are we doing? So I'm thinking, like, even though it's just running for the DeKalb County Board and it's a small thing, even with that, how can we give back, right? So every one of my campaign events between now and November.
Yes, and you were talking about the Barb City Food Pantry. We used to contribute to our Freezing for Food campaign, and then they started their own food mart after a while. And now there's lots of food marts around it. And unfortunately, that speaks to the need, doesn't it, Devon? Because there's a lot of people that are just need that food to get by.
Yeah, I mean, inflation's been hard, and cost of living isn't going down right now. So anything we can do to help our neighbors, and anything we can do to make sure that no kid has to go without, I think is worthy. And if that costs us some campaign dollars in the long run, so be it.
Now, in your letter here on Facebook, I printed Devon Wilcox for the DeKalb County Board. My name is Devon Wilcox. You explain where you're coming from. You spent your career in corporate retail as an analyst working for corporations such as Sears Holdings. Is that what happened at Sears? Sears is now Sears Holdings?
It's a funny thing about Sears. So Sears and Kmart actually
combined
back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And that was what Sears Holdings was called. So Kmart bought Sears back in their heyday.
Okay.
And the corporate name was called Sears Holdings.
We used to joke, whatever happened to Roebuck?
Yeah.
What happened to Roebuck?
Yeah, I could tell you.
Well, one of the things you mentioned here is that solar project proposals, and you kind of touched on that too with the, there's a big, 260-acre solar project farm there, and we were talking about the land. I was talking to Daniel about this too, your opponent in the primary, about that land underneath there, and we'll be all right, when they take the panels away. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge there's a lot of emotions and feelings when it comes to our farmland, right? A lot of people like to say that it's the most richest fertile soil in the country, right? I think when you think about the development going around the DeKalb area, there are, when you say, let's put in a warehouse or a data center or a solar farm, that means you're taking away farmland, right? Most often than not. Of those three options, solar panels are the least permanent, right? Because they usually have a 20 to 30 year lifespan.
Okay.
And they're just right there on top of the ground. So if you want that land to be a solar farm, it can be. And then let's say the economics of farming turn around and now that land is very profitable to start planting soybeans and corn again. You can very simply remove those panels and plant. You can't do that if it's a warehouse or a data center, right?
But I know you're not an agronomist, but do we know what happens to that land where it's not getting any sun? It's getting the water's getting through, right? But
Well, again, then there's a lot of, I would say, and not saying that you are, but there's a lot of misinformation out there around solar, right?
Sure.
And, like the idea that the solar panels leak toxins into the ground or that it damages the soil around. Light is ambient, right? There's light getting in here. There's no direct light pointing in here, but there's light getting in here, right? That's how light works in the fields too. So even though the panels are there, the ground is fine. When there's clouds in the sky, the ground is fine. So let's take it back a little bit.
Well, now your opponent Daniel mentioned some native grasses and native things.
Yeah,
that
so
they can plant underneath.
that bur oaks one they're planting native plants around there, and that's more to help with the ecology and the soil health, which I think is great, right? One of the things I think people don't realize is one of the biggest issues with our surrounding land is not necessarily industrial waste, right? It's more like the salt that we use on the roads, right? The runoff and the water going into the land, like that's actually really bad, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about, solar panels. But, overall, I believe in a greener, cleaner future where we rely less on fossil fuels and more on renewable energy. And the more that we can be a part of that with our surrounding land, I think is great.
Sure.
I think it's another important thing to acknowledge, though, is that in the race for county board, the way that the Illinois laws are set up is there's actually very little decision that the county has on the zoning of the land for solar use. The state has made it so that if somebody wants that to be zoned for a solar farm, there are not a lot of things that the county itself can do to stop that. And that's to promote overall growth. And that's because in other areas, there are bad actors who try to hold it up with like zoning and redistricting and a lot of like loopholes and like put it through legal hell.
Yeah, we see projects get held up. Look at, the bridge at First Street in DeKalb when they're building it. Just one delay after another.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's at the state level that was meant to do that. That's not to say that like DeKalb itself is doing anything wrong, but projects like that, it's not really like DeKalb can say yes or no.
Now, one of the three issues, again, I got the pleasure of interviewing your opponent last week. Obviously, you mentioned it, one of the three big issues, and that is, of course, the DeKalb County Rehab and Nursing Center. I didn't realize, I joked about the Jordan plan. I said that Michael Jordan's going to pay for everything, but was that the company that was going to buy the nursing home, and then they backed out of it, right?
I don't remember the exact name of the company, but yes, there was a company, a good investment group that was trying to buy it up. I personally believe the county nursing home should be run by the county. It should be owned by the county. I think it's very important to have something that an affordable option for our, parents and grandparents to be able, to live in if they're unable to be at home, with their children, grandchildren. I think one of the things people may not realize, right, is that, and I was talking to somebody about this, so if they listen, they'll recognize this. And then they said to me that a lot of private development companies actually try to go around and find county-owned nursing homes to buy because they're usually the most well-managed. They're usually the best assets, right? When they become privately managed, it's about cutting costs. It's about the bottom line, right? Versus when it's county managed, it's more about quality. It's more about maintaining the assets. It's more about making sure that there's a long-term health to the place itself. And that's not to say that things can't go wrong, right? Like I think there was a period of mismanagement many years ago and things got bad, but they've been on a long course to recorrect that. And I think they're in a great spot. So I think
now let's talk about the elephant in the room. They have been operating at a loss for years there.
But I think when you say it like that, right? Yes, they're operating at a loss, but it's also county owned, right? So it's like, should they be profiting on the quality of care?
That's a good point.
I would like to see it net out. right? Like, let's not lose too much, but let's manage that loss. I don't want to see us making money off of our senior citizens in this community.
Oh, that's a good point. When I looked at the numbers, I had one opinion, but then with the radio station, we went and did the grand opening when they added on to the DeKalb County Rehab and Nursing Center. And I met the people that work there and the people that live there and then the passion that they had. And there was no way that they're taking their, selling this to somebody else. And
No.
that really spoke volumes for me, Daniel, Devon, when I met the people that worked there and saw and the passion that they had for that place.
Yeah, and I personally have not been able to go there and more read and talk about these things with the community, but I would look forward to going and visiting and touring the facility and seeing that same thing you saw.
And then debt burden and property tax man. I did the AI. I asked what are the three biggest issues in DeKalb County, and then it came up the financial stability of the county rehab and nursing center, debt burden and property taxes, and land use for renewable energy projects there. But the debt burden, I didn't realize it. Are we still paying off the courthouse addition that we had there in Sycamore, the new county jail? I was talking to Daniel about that because I got to take a tour of that jail, and I know it was built to add on more. But then we have the no bail ruling.
Yep.
Which I don't know how much that building is really being utilized.
Well, keep in mind, so before cash bail was ended in Illinois, DeKalb was already operating on a pretrial release program.
Okay.
So that's what we have now, right? Which is that you no longer get to get out of jail if you're rich enough, right? It's more about the severity of the crime you committed. I personally, will go on record, and you look back at the paper, I was on record that I am a big proponent of ending cash bail. I think it is regressive, and it ends up just hurting people who are lower on the income scale and benefiting people who have more money, right? Versus now, like if you're somebody who does something egregious, like you hit your wife or you murder somebody, you're not getting out of there no matter how much money you got in your pocket, right? And then, you can stand trial. Also, we've not seen rates of people skipping out of town, and it's pretty much flat to where it was before. But again, DeKalb had already been operating on that basis for a number of years. The county board actually implemented that a number of years before Illinois ended cash bail. And we had a new jail then, and, it had people in it. I don't think, I will say off the top of my head, I don't know the current capacity of the county jail. I think it's being managed fairly well. I think we're at a good spot. I like to see that as empty as possible because it's lower crime. So I think an empty jail is a good problem to have, personally.
And if we wrap things up, what is your number one issue as you go in and possibly get a seat here on the DeKalb County Board? What would be the first thing you want to do? I know you want to learn and listen, but I was talking to Daniel about that learning curve, and you don't want to waste a lot of time. You want to hit the ground running too, right? So tell us how you're going to balance that, Devon, between learning and then getting some stuff done.
So I think it's important for everyone to know too that like the seat that we're running for it's got 2 years, right? So it's already going to be abridged. So there's definitely going to have to be some learning on the go. Being a junior member, right? It is more about taking things in and learning.
And I just learned this. There's 2 years and there's 4-year terms in the county board. Okay.
And I believe the 2-year term is because of what happened with Savannah and the appointment. So that's why it's like the balance of the term is being run for. I personally, I would say that like some things that stick out to me that resonate to me are just like quality of life, cost of living type things. Living in a single family home, you get a lot of like people knocking on your door every day, right? And half of them these days are solar panel people wanting to put solar panels on your roof, right?
Or get one window, get another window free.
Yeah, that too, right? Or you got the roofing, and I think each municipality has standards on solicitation, but I think at the county level, there's maybe some room there where we can say like, hey, how can we standardize this? How can we help people, feel a little less scammed, at the door. Again, taking it to solar panels, if a lot of those people who may not want them on the ground, you want them on the roof maybe, right? Or like in Europe, they do what's called balcony solar, right? Which is like if you have a balcony, you can just put this thing on your balcony and it won't charge your house, but maybe it takes care of like a quarter of your electric bill, right? Those are solutions, right?
Yeah.
But the model that we've set up in this country is more the door-to-door salesman type. And so you get some 18-year-old rolling up on your door, like wanting to sell you a solar panel, and you don't know who he is, what company he's working for. And then 4 companies later, you're talking to somebody, and you almost have to have a part-time job trying to figure this out, right? Now, I'm not saying at the county level we can solve that, but what are things we can do at the county level to maybe filter out who's coming to your door, right? So that this person knocking on my door, is legit, has been certified, or not even certified, but has been vetted, and we know that they'll be okay, right? So
Yeah.
like, what are our processes we could do there? Kind of, I liken it to the Energy Star on your appliance, right? Back in the day, you know, like, hey, this thing will save me money because it's got the Energy
Right.
Star. You know, it's like the green little DeKalb Genetics logo, where it's like, hey, yeah, this person isn't going to scam you.
Now, when you talk about working well with others, obviously, again, there'll be 2 seats. There's obviously 2 seats in every district.
Yep.
And that'll be either, it'll be Selma Sayans, right?
Yes.
Now, have you worked with her? Will you work with her? What do you think about that when having 2 people covering that same area? Do we have to be on the same page, or can we have 2 different ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at that list now, there's many instances where there's a Democrat and a Republican for the same area.
Refreshing to see that.
Yeah.
A lot of where Republicans aren't running.
Yeah. And I think it was Mike Polaire, I think you had on the show a couple weeks ago. And I was listening to that, and I thought it was, he had a very good point of view on it, which is right. It's like, there's really not a lot of partisanship at this level, right? I would hope that the person that's representing the district with me has a different point of view, right? Because I also know that I may not know everything going on. You know, she may be talking to other people, I'm not. And so together, we get together, we talk to each other, and we can come at this from the best point of view for District 5, for the people of Cortland and Maple Park.
Pretty good. All right. And then finally, this is a little off the thing, but again, I know it's very near and dear to your heart. We had Veronica Garcia Martinez, who was running for against Jeff Kiker.
Yes.
We were talking about, she really opened up my eyes. We were talking about bilingual education, and she pointed out that at least 60% of the world population speaks more than one language. And then we here in America, I failed Spanish in high school twice, so I mean, I wish I would know that now, but it's great to learn about that. But you're with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrants and Refugee Rights, and we talked to Veronica. We have her on a couple times, actually, keeping us up to date about ICE in the area and what's going on and what you can do to help battle that. And tell us about you're very emotional. I see here on a statement you made. I'm assuming this is you, Dev, with the feeling very strongly about the shooting in Minnesota, and want to make sure that's you before I attribute that to you. But
yes, it is, and I will gladly go on the record as saying so.
Your passion kind of came through there. Tell us about that, and what is the Illinois Coalition for Immigration and Refugee Rights?
Yeah, so I am a co-lead facilitator for the DeKalb Area Rapid Response Team. That is a rapid response team in the history. You know, you might look back to things like the Rainbow Coalition, Friend Hampton, and Chicago, and other mutual aid type groups throughout history. We are designed in order to educate, advocate, and inform our neighbors about things from Know Your Rights to things that be happening in Springfield or DC related to immigration laws, but then also providing kind of oversight and documentation of when ICE does come into our community, and making sure that we're informing our community that they're here, and then making sure that when they are here, that they're being documented.
I say document, right?
Exactly. You know, everything we saw in Minneapolis, Minnesota, you know, was heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. But, you know, before that, you had Operation Midway Blitz going on in the Chicago area. I liken that to, you know, we had this giant hurricane over the Chicago area. You had agents en masse just going out, collecting people, popping out of Penske trucks, and in full military gear,
yes,
zip tying children in the middle of the night. You know, a lot of stuff that feels un-American, frankly. And over here in DeKalb, we did have ICE come into the community. They came in October, where they picked up 2 people, and they racially profiled a third. And then before that, there were...
They chased a young man down right over there by the Lowe's. It was Veronica told us that they actually chased the young man down who was here legally.
There was a man at the marathon across from Hopkins Park who was getting gas, and they cornered him there. And they were harassing him, trying to rough him up, but he actually had ID on him. And so they let him go. And then they made a big show. They turned on all their lights, and they were honking, and they drove out of town, blew on through red lights through downtown DeKalb.
Is that right?
Yep. And then drove out past Maple Park and back into the suburbs. That was a really awful day. I'm going to be frank, for our community, you know.
Yeah, it was. Well, that's not our America. A lot of people say that's not our America. You see that happen. Like, that's not the America that we know. That's like...
Yeah. And so one of the things is that that morning there were 2 other individuals who were picked up. One was a father, and you know, he had kids who, you know, went to school in DeKalb. And you know, when you think about this, like, when I say our community, I think there's, in this instance, the Hispanic community, the white community, the Black community in DeKalb, we're one community, right? And so when this happens to one of us, this happens to all of us. And I take that very personally. And so my work with DART, the DeKalb Area Rapid Response Team, is how can we help protect our neighbors and make sure that we're advocating for them. Know your rights is the single most important thing you can do. If you're listening to this and you have not taken a Know Your Rights training, I implore you to. There are many you can find virtually. We'll also be hosting some in the future in person where you can learn just more about your Fourth, Fifth Amendment rights. What do you have to do when you're talking to a law enforcement officer? What's the difference between talking to local police and talking to ICE? Because there's a lot of differences there.
Yeah.
How to identify the difference between your local police officer and a federal agent and a state cop. There's a lot there that you can learn and be able to empower you.
And if you want to help support this organization locally, how can we do that?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook, DeKalb Area Rapid Response Team, and we also have a Gmail, DeKalbRRT@gmail.com. Facebook is a great way to get a hold of us. If you see anything suspicious, you can reach out to us. If you're interested in holding a Know Your Rights training, you can reach out to us, and otherwise just follow us. And we're usually just there to share verified information for everyone to know.
His name is Devon Wilcox. Again, he is running for the County Board District 5 seat against Daniel Bethelberg. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with Daniel's name, but they got that. And then, of course, ultimately in November, be facing Suzanne Benstock as well. So we appreciate what you're doing, Daniel. It's great that you're running. And, it'd be so easy to just say, let somebody else do it, and especially in the times that we're living in. But you're not doing that, right?
You do sometimes have to ask yourself, hey, who's going to step up and do this? And sometimes the answer is me,
Tell us about the discussion you had with your lovely wife when you told her that you were doing this. Or can you?
Yeah, no, her reaction was, well, I figured you would eventually. Like I said, I've always been very politically active. I usually knock on doors for candidates. I usually more behind the scene phone banking and stuff like that. But this time I finally decided to throw in my hat, and she's been great. She's such a great support. I could not be more proud of how she's helped me, and I know she's proud that I'm running. So
March 17th is the primary, right? Get out now.
March 17th, get out to vote. Yep,
early voting.
voting.
Early in primaries? Tell us about
Yes,
that.
early voting starts, I think, beginning of February.
Okay.
I should know that. Oops. But yeah, beginning of February. It begins early voting for the primaries. You can vote by mail. You can vote in person at the DeKalb County Legislative Building. And then March 17th is the day of the primary.
And I asked your opponent, Daniel, the same thing. Will you work for him now if you don't get the nomination? Will you work for Daniel?
We have both mutually agreed to support the other candidate in the event that one loses, which, yeah. So,
All right,
no, I definitely will. I think it's more about, as I joke, we agree on 99% of stuff. So I will gladly stop for him if he wins. And I know he'll do the same for me.
And you're probably wearing your Bears hat that you survived the.
That's right. We made another week.
Yeah. Oh, yes, sir. His name is Devon Wilcox. Again, thank you for your time. A big thanks to our sponsors, and our big thanks to my two nephews, Ethan and Michael Davis, to get this on the air at TD Ryan Unleashed, podcast number 40, Election 2026, Chapter 2.